So like I stated before, we're only going to be dealing with income and price changes. We're not going to deal with preference changes. That's kind of the other side of the equation. So when we're talking about price changes, again, it helps to use an example, right? So if we have this too good world where you're either buying cameras or baseball bats, and if we're told that the price of baseball bats has increased. Well, if we're told that the price of baseball bats increased, then intuitively we know that we can buy fewer baseball bats, right? But how do we show this? So we show this by rotating this line inwards. So it's going to start at the same initial point, but now it ends at fewer baseball bats, right? To represent the fact that at this new price, if we spent all of our income on baseball bats, let's say we could get 100 baseball bats before, now we're only able to get 50. So when the price of baseball bats rises, this budget constraint is going to rotate inwards. And again, we can do a handy dandy dashed line, which shows us the possibility of whether new consumption choices are going to involve less or more of both goods. So if the new consumption decision is to be somewhere in this region, J, then we're going to consume less of each good. If the new decision is somewhere up here and it's H, then we're obviously going to be buying more cameras than we were previously at point M, and we're going to buy, a little less than half of the baseball bats we were previously purchasing. And lastly, if we were at some sort of point like L over here, we're going to be at a situation where even though the price of baseball bats increased, for whatever reason, maybe it's baseball season, maybe you took a job as a Little League coach. So regardless of the price of baseball bats, your preference for bats has not changed, or maybe it's increased because of taking on that job, right? So just because of the fact that the price has increased doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to be purchasing fewer of that particular good. So questions on price changes. So when we're talking about price changes, there are a couple of reasons why people typically consume less of the product with a higher price. So let's talk about that right now. So typically, right, we're going to be in this region or this region. We're not typically going to be in a situation where the price increases and we're going to increase the amount of baseball bats from M to L, right? So our typical response as prices increase, the quantity demanded for that good decreases, right? That's our law of demand. That's just our law of demand. So what are the two reasons for this? Well, the first one is called our substitution effect. So this says that when a price changes, consumers have an incentive to consume less of that good with a relatively higher price. So they substitute so consumers substitute replacing, let's just be clear in our language here, replacing the more expensive good with the good that hasn't changed its price. Wow, okay. I don't know why we're having such trouble today, computer. The relatively cheap good. The second effect that we have that causes this law of demand to true out in reality is going to be called our income effect. So our income effect is this notion that higher prices mean lower buying power of your income. So this is another way of saying that you can buy less stuff. With the same income. So even though your actual income hasn't changed, the buying power, the purchasing power of your income, the amount of stuff you can actually buy has decreased. So these two things always happen simultaneously. Questions on income or substitution effect?